Well, hey guys, welcome to my workshop. Hey, my last video was making the Farmhouse Christmas sign. I was really excited how that thing turned out. Turned out really good, but I wanted to do another shop update, obviously. That's what I like to do on my last project videos. But this time I wanted to do it different. I didn't do any sort of text. I didn't do any sort of voiceover for that video, and so I thought instead of just telling you about the things I thought I would do different, why don't I just do a commentary of that video? So we're going to go ahead and start that video, and you're going to be able to watch the video again with my commentary down in the bottom right corner. So let's go ahead and get started. And so obviously this thing I made for Christmas. My wife wanted it. She found it on Pinterest on the website that is in the description below of this video. So if you've watched any of my videos, you know that I have a video on how to distress wood. Now this plan called for distressing of some of this pine board that you would buy at the store. Now I kind of did it the way I would do it, which is essentially the same way they did it in their description of how to make it. But these tools that I have, as you can see, they're very primitive, but that's kind of what you want. You want something primitive. You just scratch up the board. The screws also act as kind of those faux wormholes to give it that look like it's been used a lot. And then the chisel roughing up the edges, putting dents all over the thing, makes it look really good. And then I typically just use a really dark special walnut stain to apply to it. In the past, I've not really let it dry a whole lot. In fact, very little, just so I can get the dark color down into all those grooves. But for this project, that's not what it called for, so I went ahead and stained this thing just like you would typically do. You apply all your stain and then wait about 5 to 10 minutes and take off the excess with a paper towel. Pumpkin spice latte. Pretty good. So after wiping that off, obviously you need to let it dry. So I set that aside and I started to work on the frame to go around this board. One thing that I noticed that I did a little bit backwards, which I think if you follow the plans to making this, you'll probably notice it, pick up on it. The problem was I did not really distress these boards. I took them and I stained them. Actually, I started staining one and then realized that I hadn't done any distressing to it. So I didn't get to use my paddle with the screws. I just ended up beating it up with my chisel. So here's how I did it. You can see I had those snap and then all of a sudden they're all stained. Well, it's because one, I stained and then realized the problem, and then I went back and did it all, so that just kind of skipped. Plus you didn't really need to see me stain every single board again. It's the same process as the pine board. So this is trying to show you the website, where to go. One difference that they pointed out was the font changed. So that was where I was trying to point out this font, and this is the exact font that I ended up using from that website. I downloaded it to my Mac, and then everything went pretty smoothly. Now the programs that she listed, I couldn't really figure out to find like a free version or something that worked simpler. So I actually ended up just using the simple Word note program in the Mac. On Windows you could just use Word, Microsoft Word, and made it as big as I could, and it worked out really well. Because you can see the size was pretty good, ended up being one per page. I printed out one as a test, brought it downstairs and did the layout prior to making this video, and the size was perfect right off the bat. Didn't have to do any tweaking to the size at all. So the way that I was transferring this, according to the plans, was different than what I'm used to doing. I was going to, well, let me backtrack. Typically, what I do is I'll try to tape it off and cut out the piece and then paint it. Obviously, as you can tell, these words are very intricate. There's just almost no way I could do that properly. So the way they were telling you to do is use wood transfer paper. I ended up just using transfer paper from like a carbon copy, invoice sheet kind of deal. It's definitely not the same, and you can tell later in this video it didn't really put a very dark indentation into the wood. So I had to really look at it very good, kind of like at angles. I even shined my light on it to try to help bring out the tracing that I did. And obviously, also you could tell, I started with the pencil, and then I was quick to switch to a pen. And that was because the tip of that pen is much harder than the tip of that pencil, and the pencil is going to get dull, so it just wasn't the best option. And you can see it really wasn't too dark, but it was just enough for me to see. It's actually a little darker in real life versus the video. The video had a hard time picking that up. And you can see my transfer papers there. It's just an 8x10 sheet, and I just kept moving it to do what I wanted to do. I was really happy how this turned out. It kind of gave me ideas for how to do things in the future, because the next step, using a paint pen, which I have right here still, actually came in a 2-pack here. One's white. I don't think I'm going to use white, but I got it from Hobby Lobby. These things are really nice, and I ended up buying a different pen to do some transferring, so we'll probably make another video on how to do that with this pen. It's really neat. But you can see everything was really light, not very dark. So there's the pen, and this is different than your typical pen, and I was debating whether or not I wanted to go this route because the plans called for an acrylic water-based paint pen, and she specifically said don't use oil-based. I really didn't understand why. I couldn't figure it out. The only thing I could figure out was maybe it's going to give a different look. And so rather than doing an experiment and testing, because I had to buy this pen anyways, I went ahead and just looked a little extra hard and found the pen at Hobby Lobby. Just for your information, I've never found one at Lowe's. If you do find it at Lowe's or Home Depot, leave a comment below with maybe a link so other people can know. And then the sanding here was just to take away the look of printed on words. I don't know if that makes sense, but you know, by doing it, as you can see here, it just looks like this piece was right on top of the wood, and taking just a little bit off revealed some of the grains, so it made it kind of become one and looked really good at that point. So I've got this pocket hole jig, and if you are into woodworking and you've been around YouTube any length of time, you know exactly what these things are. There are very special uses for these. They're not meant to take stress, in my opinion, but they're good for little things like this, where you could use a dowel jig, or you could put air nails, which is something I thought about doing. And honestly, air nails if you have access to air nails, that is the easiest way to do it, because there's a lot more time involved doing this. You've got to drill the hole, you got to do the screw, versus air nail, you just pop it in there. But I resisted the temptation of doing that just because not everybody's going to have those. And these pocket hole jigs, this one here is about $100, but there is a simpler one, and I have it packed away over here, so I'm not going to pull it out. But it's just one, a single one, and you clamp it on with a clamp, and that's under $10. So you know, you can get what you want, or you can use air nails. If you wanted to use regular nails with your hammer, that probably would work too. You're just gonna have to be extra careful. So here we are, putting the sides on this thing, and looking back, I think I really would change one thing, and I don't know if you could tell, when I laid the board on the table and put the frame, it kind of came up away from the frame. Like, as you can see right now, it's actually sitting back in the frame. Personally, I really like that look much better. The plans called for it to be the way that I just did it, where it would all be flush, but it really just didn't look as nice and appealing. I think I understand why this gives you an edge to hang it, but really it's not a big deal. You could put a little hanger strap on the back. So I would definitely change that and go back and do that again. In fact, I could probably do it just because they're held in by screws. So you can play around with it and see what you think. Well, this video not this video, sorry, this project turned out excellent. I really enjoyed it. My wife really liked it. We've actually hung it up. The funny thing is, the picture at the end with it hanging on the wall next to the tree was just kind of for the video. We had something else hanging there. I took it off, put it there. But she ended up liking it enough and kind of liked the picture, so she actually hung it. And that's where we have it hanging right now. But major props for my wife. She is into this farmhouse thing now. And obviously Farmhouse is real big and popular. And so she gets all the props for this project, because if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have probably thought to make this thing. But as you can see, it turned out great, looks marvelous, and it's ready for Christmas. So obviously I could have other ideas. I could do other projects with the same techniques. I can make other signs. She has other sign ideas, but not all of them are going to be YouTube videos, just because it gets kind of boring seeing somebody make 10 signs when you're all using the same technique. It's just maybe a little different words or shapes or sizes. So anyways, I hope that you enjoyed this form of an update video. If you like this format more than me just talking about it, let me know in the comments below. If it's something you would rather see me do, just commentary on the video, we'll just start doing that. I kind of like this. It's kind of fun, and I'm able to feel like I'm almost more connected because I'm watching it at the same time you might be watching it again. So it's almost like we're watching it together, and I'm just commentating on it. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you grabbed some coffee. This is pretty good. And thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.